Okay, so about once a week, someone comes in my office and they say, Dr. Pyle, I want a breast augmentation, but I don't want breast implants. And what they mean is they want an augmentation that's created just from their own tissue, and that's called fat grafting. Fat grafting has a really interesting and valuable history in the United States. It's something that 30 years ago wasn't really done. And then shortly after that, about 20 years ago, we started using it, or a couple of pioneers started realizing that if you could remove fat cells from one area and move them to another and keep them alive, then they functioned like normal fat cells in the new place. And in the time since then, we've realized, hey, there's a lot of roles where that sort of a thing would be useful. And naturally, as we use implants off of a shelf, and implants have their own controversies throughout history, and people have always wondered, well, how safe is this thing? If we have the question of should we use something off the shelf or should we use something that already exists in the human body, it'd be pretty hard for me to say we should take something off of a shelf instead of using something totally natural that's already in you. So it's an easy conversation to have with someone because I think I understand where their perspective is. But it's also a fairly easy conversation to have because when we get into the nitty-gritty, when we get into the details of what a fat grafting breast augmentation really is, it's not as attractive in real life as it seems. Here's why. First, when the fat is removed from one area and moved to another area, it has to be put into an environment where it can be kept healthy and alive. So as much as possible of that fat stays alive to give the shape and the size that we want. And when breast augmentation happens, using fat grafting, one surgery usually isn't enough to create the result that the person wants. That's because there just isn't enough room to put enough fat in to create the shape and the size that we want and keep it healthy and alive at the same time. So for most people, fat grafting for breast augmentation is more than one surgery unless they have very modest goals. So it can be very expensive. It has the risks of multiple surgeries. It has the recovery of multiple surgeries. And the person has to have enough fat to be able to harvest it a couple of times, not just once. So there's the practical issues. And the second thing that makes it not a very commonly chosen procedure is the aesthetic issues associated with fat grafting. When we put an implant in, that implant has a structure to it. It has a shape. And ideally, or in most cases, it's as full in the center or more full in the center than it is anywhere else. Well, when fat is put into a skin envelope or fat is put into a breast, it doesn't have a shape. It's just tiny little cells or tiny little balls of fat that are injected into hundreds, even thousands of little locations. And so even though we can put the fat where we want it, it doesn't necessarily create the shape that we want. So if a person's goal with breast augmentation is just size and not shape, then fat grafting may be a good option, though it may take multiple surgeries. But if somebody's goal is both size and shape, for most breasts, in most people, the fat doesn't add the shape that they want.